So let me start with you, Glenn. Yeah,
Yeah.
you good? So one of the thoughts that has been in my mind when I speak to, and in fact, conversations with academics and education leaders, particularly in the university setup is, look, we guys know what we are doing. We have, over centuries, perfected the art of how to train students in research and development. What is this open innovation system? Why are you, sort of bringing this idea when the universities have already served society through their established practices? How do you respond to that?
I think it's a very, very fair challenge. It's not the first time it's been made. And although I have colleagues back in the UK and colleagues in America and Canada and Australia, in many other research-intensive universities that try to isolate themselves from the outside world, actually, universities are changing and are listening. So in the UK, for example, a lot of the measurements, a lot of the way we're measured, regulated, tested, is actually around engagement. So one of the key metrics in a UK university that you're measured against is called the Research Excellence Framework. So it's a sort of 7-year census of how important, how valuable your research has been. And partly it's about the quality of the research outputs. But the big innovation over the last few years has actually been around engagement. So at a British university, we've discovered, looking at the current set of metrics, that actually been able to demonstrate in a single case study that you have had a positive impact on the outside world is worth 10 internationally leading articles. And this has fundamentally changed the way that universities have actually had to think about the way in which they engage. And there has been I think, nothing short of a revolution in some of the leading UK universities, but also internationally, about how we see ourselves and how we see our roles.
Thank you, Glenn. So what I understood is that I think universities are slowly but surely changing, and they're embracing the idea of industry engagement. They are actually measured on it now.
Yep.
So that's really a welcome sign. Which brings me to the next topic, but perhaps I can throw that at Bryn. That when we look at the curriculum and learning experience, and we saw the fast-forward movement, big data, analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, robotics. Do you believe that the university curriculum has actually lagged some of these innovations? That many of these inventions have come, I wouldn't want to use this phrase, but I would say that in spite of the university system? Or have they come from the university system?
Yeah,
Has the curriculum lagged?
I think I disagree with saying in spite of the university system, probably. It's true that some innovations have come from people that have dropped out of university, people that didn't finish their degrees, but universities, I think, are still an engine for innovation. They're an engine for invention, and I think they're playing a major role in driving technology and science and engineering forward. I would actually, partly going back to the question that you asked, Lynn, I would admit that perhaps universities in the past had been overly precious around IP, so that perhaps there had been some barriers to exploiting some of the ideas that have come out of university, and the move to open innovation, I think, is a very positive one and a real step forward in getting university ideas, university-generated ideas, out into the wider world.
Thank you, Bryn. Very refreshing to hear. Professor Christopher, a similar question, but industry engagement, and as a B school, probably you're best qualified to answer this, that are universities doing lip service to industry engagement? For them, it means, yeah, I've got to place my students in a job. Let me have some part of their learning experience as an internship or project be done in the university, and hopefully, they will find a pathway, and my headache is over when they graduate, because some universities may think in some basic terms that this is university and industry engagement. What would be a more sort of solid definition of what are the specific ideas of university engagement with industry? And
good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for that question. I think very pertinent in the 21st century. Before I get on to answering that, let me also give you a socioeconomic context. I mean, there's this term that was coined by Dan Tapscott a few years back called Wikinomics. And Wikinomics is the economics of open collaboration across the world. Now, the best example of that is edX, a beautiful, unexpected collaboration between MIT and Harvard, who have sworn enemies for centuries. So the world is moving towards a collaborative model, and I think innovation should also follow suit. Taking from there, industry, university, industry, business school interface, I think is more now a priority than an option. The reason being, as you rightly said, the ultimate stakeholders is society at large. So the question that we need to ask ourselves, and I think it's a very important soul-searching question, are we preparing the relevant, appropriate graduates with the appropriate relevant skills ready for a future that is VUCA, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous? And the answer is very, very ambiguous because we're still grappling with it. But I think the way forward would be to look at strategic partnerships. The gentleman from DTEC spoke about the Intel industry collaboration, the IBM Google collaboration. I think more and more of this should happen, not just from government entities. We really encourage and appreciate that. But I think universities, business schools, we need to take it forward. I have one more thought, which is part of our ecosystem. We have what is called an industry advisory board. And this board constitutes people who are C-suite executives who are driving the industry. So it could be a supply chain, a gentleman from DHL, maybe a person from an IT major, Microsoft. These are actual real people. A couple of people from Arthur D. Little, from McKinsey, Boone and Company. So the idea is that you create a set of professionals who can provide strategic inputs to the academia. So it goes beyond internship, beyond projects, and beyond placements.
well said, thank you. I think what I really sort of stuck my head was that it has to be a more sort of 360-degree view of what we can do with industry, ranging from advice to real projects which are jointly owned, co-owned as well. And I like the whole idea that we have to prepare the students, and I think we don't have an answer, ready for an ambiguous and a sort of volatile future. And I think that is really an educational challenge which I'm sure all of you sort of agree with. So over to Raj, as one of the oldest campuses here. You are a locally accredited university. You have to measure up to the UAE Vision 2021. Are universities like AUD and others who have to serve a sort of national agenda really partnering with university educational services companies, accelerators, angel firms to really encourage students towards entrepreneurship and charting their own journey? Are universities like AUD engaging other stakeholders? We spoke about industry, but there are others as well.
Great. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for everyone who helped put this together. I know it's not easy to do this, so there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, and I really appreciate that, and thank you for having me here. That was a long question. Before I answer that, just a couple of things. You began with universities and research and what have you. Those of you that know AUD or have known AUD for a while, we've got a unique challenge. We started 23 years ago in the UAE as a teaching-focused university. So, when we hired anyone, including Khalid in the crowd there, it was much about how good are you in the classroom, and it was very little about research. A lot has changed in 23 years. Since then, we've acquired AACSB accreditation. Now we're going through a challenge of how do you get people to teach but then also produce research. And that's an interesting case study, and we're almost going the opposite of what everyone here is facing. And now that brings on serious challenges as well. So yes, now we're getting big time into research because of AACSB, but then coming from a background that is teaching focused, you've got the perennial problem of how can I do research when I've got X number of teaching loads, and I'm just being very candid here. So, now we've got to address the issue of research is really important, but we also now need to look at teaching loads and see how we reduce that so there's a win-win or some kind of balance. Now, engaging industry, innovation, entrepreneurship, all these things, they're very difficult. As you rightly mentioned, AUD is accredited. We're accredited by the Ministry of Higher Education in the UAE. We're also accredited by the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools in the USA. You've also mentioned that this kind of ecosystem requires a lot of collaboration. It requires collaboration between governments, between different stakeholders like investors, small businesses, students, customers, et cetera. Now, when you're accredited by the Ministry of Education, there's certain things you must do. So there's certain things that are imposed on you. So let's say, for example, we're told to do something. Then we have to think, how does that fit into our system? And then how can we balance all this thing with innovation and entrepreneurship and so on? I know in the university, not in the business school, but we've actually lost a program because it lost its appeal to students because something was being imposed on us to include in the program. So, it is a heck of a challenge. But the way forward, as was rightly pointed out, is that you cannot work in isolation. We need to work with each other. We need to realize what's the value proposition. And then we need to work together between government, industry, academics, and so on to all work towards that value proposition. So you can't have things imposed that then go against what you're trying to do, which is serve the students in terms of innovation and succeeding out there. I've mentioned a lot of challenges. Let me say a couple of brilliant things. When you work for an American university, you're then, certain things are instilled in you. Things like critical thinking. We don't come from a curriculum that is rote memory. So, when you come to AUD and you leave AUD, you leave as better thinkers. You leave as, people that can solve cases, that can offer solutions, that can analyze things, that can communicate, that can speak in public, and so many other things. That's your question.
Yes, excellent. Thank you. I think I did see that there are challenges. There are regulatory challenges. There are certain constraints on how much of the curriculum can you really adapt or are allowed to adapt. I think teaching capacity versus research load is a real challenge. But at the same time, what I saw as a strand in all the four panelists who spoke so far was, I think, preparing students through real skills like critical thinking, judgment, communication and presentation, and becoming sort of ready for an ambiguous, sort of volatile future is a strand that I feel all of you echoed, that it's important. Which brings me to Mr. Kothari, that school system obviously is a feeder into the university system. So my question to you is that, are we in our school system, which is probably even more oppressive in terms of restrictions compared to the university system, are we encouraging students to be curious, creative, bold, and passionate?
Happy morning to all of you, because the year of happiness. I feel quite safe because everybody who is on my right side are in the higher education. So I can afford to make mistakes because I'm sure as I go up the ladder, I'll be corrected. Ajay, as you said correctly, I mean, there are always challenges in the school system. Over a period of time, 20 years that I have been associated in secondary education, K-12, Last 3 or 4 years, there is a dramatic change that we are going through. As we say to parents that we don't teach anymore in the classroom. What's really happening in the classroom is learning. And learning comes from thinking. So there is no more teacher coming in the classroom, giving a lecture, looking at the textbook and goes home. Now it's other way around. The classroom starts with the first question from a student. That means they're thinking. We have obviously in the lower end of the education system, being the school, there's a difference that we make between innovation and invention. Obviously, our inventions are limited. So what we do, we take advantage of inventions done at the higher education end and implement and integrate them with our education system. For example, in our school, we have introduced in the last 3 years STEM labs. STEM lab, basically what we are doing, we are mapping our curriculum of science, English, maths, and technology as part of their curriculum and using this as a tool, innovative tool to ensure they understand what they're doing. It has become more application-oriented learning, which was not the case earlier. It was rota learning earlier, particularly in the Indian education system. There's no more rota learning. Now it's more of thinking. It's more of participation, more of application. And that comes from innovation. We started another project recently called Seed to Plate. All we did, young kids, we gave them small pots where they could plant seeds, grow fruits, and take it to the plate. Now, this is nothing but teaching them or so that they learn what the biology is all about. How does plant come to life and so on and so forth. So these are innovative. I mean, we have various methods like flipped class system. We did recently, as you may have known, many people who live in UAE would know, we joined hands with one of the NGOs, Gurdwara, where we distributed 2,000 saplings of plants to students. And then we, as a school, we gave 700 saplings to another school, collaborative method of learning. Now, these are nothing but making children aware through these small experiments, small steps, what it can do big in years to come. So yes, there are challenges that we have because we are governed by Ministry of Education or KHDA. When we have to implement any of these projects, they cost money. We are not able to charge. So therefore, our ability to introduce more and more ideas which may result in cost, we are not able to charge to the parents, therefore we are not able to bring to the classroom. We'd like to do it. We have done some representations both to KHDA and government, and we have found great support. They have said to us, okay, why don't you come in the beginning of the year and tell us what you want to do, and we'll give you permission. So like we got certain approvals from them. There is resistance from parents, because they think if you're within the school hours, you're teaching them something, why would you charge them more? Now, obviously, when you buy these resources, when you invest in these resources, I won't look at from ROI point of view, but there's a cost that we incur. Somebody needs to share the cost. We as a school are willing to subsidize. We as a school are willing to share the cost, but obviously we are not in the position to absorb 100%. These are small challenges. We have found over a period of time when parents can see the benefit of these things that we are doing, they are willing to share the cost with us. And we have been able to introduce that, and I'm pleased to say that like year before last, out of 22 students who got Hamdan Award, 16 were from our school. So obviously they have done very well. And that is because there's emphasis on innovation, use of technology. We are very tech savvy. And I can say that every single student in the school, every single teacher in the school has to be technology savvy. And these are innovative things like smart boards is now no more technology, now it's a must in the classroom. So only thing we do is we don't let teachers bring a pre-prepared lesson. They have to make the lesson plan. Therefore, they have to think. Even the teachers have to think. They just can't pick up plug and play lessons. So things like that. And I'm pleased to say that kids today are very, very keen. They are more innovative. They are better thinkers than they were of my time. I can say that for sure. Thank you.
Well, looks like we have a bright young future under your stewardship in your school. And what I gathered was, I think, application is important. The great example of seed to plate and saplings was, I think, will change something inside their minds, that how growth happens, and not just about learning biology.
Plus they become
but
environment
environment
aware and friendly.
friendly and aware. And tech savviness has to run through the institution. It must include teachers who need to be tech savvy. Students obviously are. So thank you for your comments. Back to Glyn. Should the university curriculum have mandatory elements, although I don't like that word, mandatory elements that build innovation competencies all the way through their educational cycle? Universities may believe that they already do so, but a more systematic way of building innovation competencies. Not just the usual buzzwords, sorry to say, critical thinking, communication and presentation, teamwork, leadership, but real competencies that entrepreneurs and innovators need.
So I think my simple answer to that would be no. And the reason is that actually in a big comprehensive university, there are a great many subjects where actually parachuting in 2 or 3 modules on innovation, entrepreneurship, intrapreneurship would seem quite alien, would jar with the students. They wouldn't thank you for that. Their ambition is not necessarily to go and work in industry. They have other ambitions, and actually you need to be fairly sensitive and sensible about where you introduce it. What I would say is that there are certain categories of subjects, so around the natural sciences, engineering, where absolutely, and good universities have it built into their curriculum now, businesses, economics, finance, where absolutely, again, you would expect that kind of thing to be an important part of what you teach. But I would also say, and I think the point has really been one way or another touched on a number of occasions, that it's not just about technology and innovation. One of the buzzwords of the moment is intrapreneurship. And entrepreneurship kind of assumes that actually, while some people are built with an appetite for risk to go out and change the world, most people aren't built in quite the same way. That actually they're going to work in a big organisation one way or another. But actually what you want to do is replicate within that environment an appetite to make a contribution. And the contribution is not just about technology. One of the things that I find distressing about conversations around technology and innovation is the Google and Apple and IBM, they're the exemplars that come up time and time again. But actually, innovation is found right across the innovation. In some ways, most of the innovation that takes place is comparatively mundane. But it nonetheless has a profound impact on the operations and sometimes the strategy of those organizations. So part of what we've got to do is actually to get people who are doing those subjects or who are looking to do those subjects to operate entrepreneurially, to have a sense of actually what innovation is, where it's appropriate, discriminating alignment. But not just develop IQ, develop the emotional intelligence, develop the skills that you need, not just to come up with good ideas, but actually to sell those ideas within the organization. I've sat in many, many meetings in my time, and as an academic administrator and academic leader, increasingly, I've sat in many, many meetings, and good ideas just get passed over, and they get passed over because the people don't know how to sell them. So actually, a lot of the skills that we want to focus on are not just having the good ideas, it's actually how to articulate them in a way that authentically connects with the priorities and the agendas of the institutions they're working in.
Excellent, thank you. It's a bit of a follow-up question, picking up from Glyn, that we speak about, there are certain disciplines like business, economics, engineering, technology that are more sort of market-oriented, and that's where we need to instill the innovation mindset or entrepreneurial sort of components in the learning experience. But the same universities say, regardless of the discipline that you have, I want a certain college readiness. I want great writing skills. I want great critical thinking skills. I want this person to know how to be a team player and those core competencies of the learning experience, those I'm sure every one of you will agree must be present in any college. Why, regardless of discipline, even if you are a history or a sociology student, why can't being innovative and entrepreneurial be a core component of the skills that you must learn to be in college?
Yeah.
Why should it be restricted to just business, technology, and those disciplines?
Yeah.
Why are we sort of making innovation, innovative thinking a pariah? Just these guys, let these guys do it. We'll reserve some disciplines, the soft disciplines, with us.
Yeah, I'm in some ways I disagree a tiny bit with what Glyn said. I'll start off though, as many of you might appreciate, one of the best ways to get a university not to do something is to tell academics that something's mandatory, because that's death to some things. So saying that training and innovation or enterprise is mandatory, it's compulsory, it should be in every course, every module. It's something that would get a lot of pushback, but nevertheless, I actually think there's a lot of merit in that. In my own past life as Dean of Postgraduate Studies in Science and Engineering, I recruited and employed an enterprise lecturer to work for me, and we made available courses in enterprise and entrepreneurship at every level. So whether you were an undergraduate or a postgraduate, a PhD student or a master's student, you wanted a 10-credit course or a 20-credit course, you wanted it in different teaching formats, it was available within the menu and it could be slotted into any program. So I think it is important. I think it's important for scientists and engineers. Equally, I think it's important for fashion. We teach fashion at Heriot-Watt in Dubai. It's important for fashion designers. They often work for themselves. Fine artists, musicians, lots of people with non-science and engineering skills need skills in the area of creativity, enterprise, entrepreneurship to help them in their future careers. Where I agree with Glyn, I'm not a big fan, at least with my background in the science and engineering, of simply parachuting courses in or things in. I don't want people to come to work and say, Sunday to Thursday you were doing mechanical engineering, but on Friday morning we're going to do a session for you on enterprise, and this is something different, and it's not related to anything that you do. My own preference in teaching creativity, enterprise, entrepreneurship is to embed it throughout the program. And you can do that in things like coursework, exercises, group work. Increasingly at Heriot-Watt, we're looking at global working with students working on projects across campus. And you can build in entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial skills in that area as well. But there is still an opportunity. I think the challenge type competitions have value. And I did a small amount of research on this in a previous life where I know in Dubai this might be difficult to believe, but in the UK, some students don't like the word entrepreneur. They see it as having quite negative connotations. I had a very angry PhD student write to me once to complain about why I was making him study entrepreneurship, and he told me he hadn't studied ecology for 10 years to become an entrepreneur, and for him it was generating quite a violent response. So sometimes I think you've got to be quite subtle how you teach these skills. I think you can embed them in. So for me, things around social challenges, environmental challenges, asking students to find a creative solution to a problem, I think fires them up, and you can teach them creativity, entrepreneurship skills, but it's kind of hidden, and it gets you access to that difficult to get to market. And that I was also going to make the point that Glyn did make, actually, that and I hope this, well, maybe I'm hoping it is controversial or not controversial, but I think it's unrealistic to think that every student we're going to turn out is going to be an entrepreneur. Yeah. I don't think it's at all unrealistic to ensure that every student we turn out is an intrapreneur, and those people are just essential to the economy, that if you don't have employees who can be creative, who can identify opportunities and have got the energy and the abilities to pursue them, then the economy is going to fall apart. So those people are essential as well, and it's our duty to deliver people with those skills.
Thank you, Bryn. This was brilliant. I think the as a father of a millennial, I know that if you impose and give a label to something, there is an immediate reaction not to accept it. But more as an educator, I also believe that I think embedding innovative thinking, being able to passionately believe in something, pursue the idea, sell it, and advance that should be embedded into everything that we do in the university. It shouldn't be parachuted as one course. So this was brilliant. Thank you. Which brings me to Professor Christopher, and this is really your favorite theme. You think a lot about positive psychology. You think a lot about happiness, and you've done a lot of research on this. So what is the connection between a creative society and a happy society? Does innovation play a role in all this?
Okay. Let me give you a very recent example that happened as late as 2 days back. This was at the Strategy Execution and Innovation Forum, a C-suite event where you had senior level 40, 50 years old. And I had a session at the end of day one, which was a 90-minute session. The session was designing innovative strategies using happiness by Lego blocks. I mean, real Lego blocks. We had an audience of about 80 plus, most of them gray-haired like me, and you could see the child in every single one of them come from 5 minutes onwards. Initially, it took some time for them to really believe they're going to play with Lego blocks. Now, the biggest lesson for all of us sitting here is that in our conventional educational system, we have done some Himalayan blunders, if I may use that word. I mean, if you go back in time, the educational system that we have inherited is from the Industrial Revolution. It made a lot of sense then to have that study. And let's be honest, brutally honest here, in the current system, knowledge which is available at the touch of a button need not be imparted by the educational system. In other words, we facilitate that and make that available to the student. Raj was talking about critical thinking, which is part of the ethos of the educational system. Let's go back. Here's a startling statistic that children start asking questions when they start talking. And the question starts increasing every year. And this is between 2 years to 5 or 6 years. After 6 years, something remarkable happens, scary thing happens, that they stop asking questions, right? And I think parents, the school system, the educational system, with exceptions like DPS, we have killed the power to ask questions. So one of the things, and we say, shut up, because we ask the questions, you answer. And I think that is completely wrong. So we need to create the power to ask questions. He said, we start the class with questions, number one. Number two, we have effectively killed curiosity, the power to seek, search. And I think 21st century, there's something called search intelligence. One of the key critical skills for the 21st century is how do you search? Yeah. Where do you search? What do you search? And how do you find the answers? Because they're all there. So I think we need to reframe our paradigms in terms of what we impart. Now let me get into a personal example that we do at SP Jain. We have created these labs. We were speaking about artificial intelligence, virtual reality, IoT, big data. Now, you might wonder, what has all this got to do with a business school? So if you look at a typical university system, or even a business school system, the supply chain professor has his own kingdom, the marketing professor has his own kingdom. I think we need to move from that to cross-functionality. So even if one course can be taught by 3 professors, cross-functional teaching, cross-functional case studies, cross-functional research. And the other most important thing is that we have created this demarcation, creative people and non-creative people. There's nothing, it's a big myth that we bring that. It's a whole brain system. The good news is that all of us can be trained to be creative, can be trained to be innovative. We have got this mindset, it's a mindset thing, this entrepreneurship that he speaks about, or that I'm not an entrepreneur. No, it doesn't matter. You need to be just creative, you need to be innovative. The good news, and this is where I think regulators also can be open. Many of you know we are an Australian accredited business school, TEXA. It took some time to convince them, but here's the good news, that in our undergraduate and master's programs, we actually have credit courses on design thinking, on creativity and innovation, on emotional intelligence. It's a 1-credit course, right? So what we've tried to do is we have put it under the label called employability and practitioner skills. And once you do that, the regulator understands, yes, they're preparing them for employment, they're preparing them for practical, relevant life skills. And I think it is very much possible. So, long answer, but I thought I should share my 2 minutes on this.
This was great. Thank you, Professor Chris. The Himalayan blunder, I think, has to be, is hard to demolish, but we are getting there through efforts like yours. And I think reframing the whole learning experience, you gave some excellent examples of even creating labs in a B school for some of these emerging technologies. That's really innovative. And I think the other aspect is under the so-called, within quotes, academic independence. There are silos that have been created within universities. It's time to demolish some of those ideas. And I think creative versus non-creative is a misnomer. Everybody is a whole-brained person, and we need to kindle the right buttons to get the best innovations out. So thank you for your comments. Suraj, talking about AUD specifically, all institutions look up to AUD. That look, it's one of the oldest. It has to, be set an example for other institutions. What do you think would be, your dream for AUD to contribute to the UAE Vision 2021? What could you do as an institution, particularly in the area of innovation? If you had to write the strategic plan, it's an unfair question. I think Lance Demasi should be answering this, but we'll give you a shot.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, and thank you for putting me on the spot on that one. But if I can just backtrack on a couple of things that happened before. I teach HR as well, and one of the things I do is stay current in the news. And just last week, there was an article published that said, the hardest things managers find from their employees is implementing strategy. So it's just not in academia. It's actually quite through the board. We're brilliant talkers. We're brilliant at, saying we're going to do certain things, but the hardest thing is closing the loop and actually doing it. And this ecosystem that we mentioned earlier, the partnership is so important, like, the how and the why and so on. Just something else that happened earlier as well is that, the beauty at AUD, one of the things that you have there is you've got 130 nationalities in our student body. You also have courses that go from design to business to engineering. You also have courses that have a mix of all these students. So, if you like, we don't have to put innovation in every course. It happens. It's just embedded. When you've got a design student working with an engineering student, with a business student in one class, and one's from Pakistan, and one's from Japan, and one's from Korea, and one's from Australia, and so on. Imagine that when that happens, it just happens. The creativity, the diversity of thought, and what have you. So in that way, we're blessed in so many ways that we don't have to sort of think of innovation courses, et cetera, et cetera. But what we do actually is we have an innovation week in every one of our classes. So the professor must do something that's very current and sort of innovative wherever it's applicable, of course. Now, I think one of the things of being the oldest university, or one of the oldest, and certainly the oldest American university in the UAE, is you have to be in line with the strategic plan. So my dream would be to have all the stakeholders work towards this value proposition that I mentioned earlier. If we are going to be brilliant contributors to Dubai 2021 and the vision and what have you, we need the government, the ministry, to definitely give us guidelines, benchmarks, and what have you, because that's what your, there's your rule of thumb and what it defines quality. But at the same time, we need to close the loop. So if we're saying universities need to produce X amount of research, then I think it should be incumbent to trust the university to know what they're doing, and then bring out their own curriculum and make them responsible and accountable that way. something that I know my academics would like me to, or like to have, is if you're going to impose amounts of research, then also impose the teaching load. So if you're going to have a certain amount of research, then also to really facilitate that, let's have that. The other thing, we need to build and continue to build stronger ties with industry, not just lip service, as you mentioned earlier, but bring industry into our classrooms, have internships, have real life projects, where LG come in and say, this is a challenge we're facing, have students in there and say, look, this is the challenge, what are you going to do about it? Get together and give us a solution, and what have you. I don't think I've fully answered your question, but I'm not in that position to do so. But
no, but we did certainly appreciate that you acknowledge your role as a leading light university to be a part of the UAE vision, and also I think some of the things that you do, like Innovation Week, and the fact that I think execution skills and implementation strategies are something that are a missing piece that you see when you talk to industry, and you're trying to sort of inculcate that in your educational practices. This is great. So this is really the last question before we move on to 5-second sound bites. Mr. Kothari, this may not be connected to the theme of the discussion, but this is something that has struck me for a while. Is it a culture or a sort of a big shock for school students to enter university from a highly protected, controlled environment to an entirely different system where you have to be self-guided learners, you have to take autonomy and charge for your decisions, and there is no sort of support system available for you. So how do you see that transition, and do you do something to prepare them?
Exactly. A very, very important question, and in fact, we recognize this problem from grade 9th onwards. We know that after grade 12th, well, they'll go to different universities, maybe different countries, completely different work environment, social environment, and so on and so forth. Therefore, there's a lot of counseling that is being done. We prepare these students as to what is coming, and that is not only by giving them workshops, but we have the people from various universities come and visit our school, talk to them, tell them what they can expect. Therefore, we in the school can help. And I think most of the good schools are doing that. We are not the only exception. I think all good schools prepare their students right from grade 9th, 10th onwards, not only for academic preparation, but also the transition that they will have from quote unquote protected. In fact, today nobody is protected. Parents have a myth, their children listen to them. And it's nice to live under that myth, but they do exactly what they think. They are good thinkers. This generation is a wonderful generation because they're very honest. They speak their mind out, number one. They know the difference between, majority of them know the difference between what they should not be doing versus what they should be doing. It's not wise only to know what to do. The wisdom is in knowing what not to do. And I think that's where we as a school in our various lessons, in various interactions with the students, prepare them as to what they should not be doing. And obviously this adolescence transition from school to university is a huge challenge, because all of a sudden they land up at a place, whether it's India or it's elsewhere, which is quite different to a great extent than what they've gone through. Therefore, while it's a challenge, and when we recognize the challenge, then we prepare them for it. We have found, because we ask the students to come back, a lot of them come back to the school to share their experiences. They come and talk to the students of grade 11th and 12th and tell them what they benefited and what they missed out. So that helps us in preparing. So we have this regular interaction of our alumni. Students come back and talk to the students. So that's how we prepare them. You can't 100% prepare them. There is, I think in every transition there's an element of challenge. And as long as we know what the challenges are, As long as we can address them, then we can prepare for them. And that's what I think all good schools do. They invite their old students, they come and share their experiences. They also share with them what are the opportunities available to them elsewhere. Not only challenges, but also opportunities available, which helps them in thinking as to which career path they should choose choices. So it's very important that schools must have regular interaction with their old students, with the batches going out, because that's how they can, it's a sharing of information, transfer of knowledge.
Thank you, Mr. Kothari. I think we've had a very rich discussion, and I think there is patience level is wearing out. There is tea after this. So 10 seconds soundbite, starting with Glyn. If you had one recommendation on how industry and academia can connect together, what would it be? Same question to all of you.
I think the first thing is that academia and industry have to make efforts to understand each other. So it's not just a question of making universities the servants of industry, or making industry take the crumbs of the academic table. Actually, there has to be an authentic dialogue, and actually, if you can get that dialogue working, productive relationships, both on a research side and teaching side, just aren't possible, but there's some of the most exciting work that universities do.
Thanks. I think for me, I think there's a lot of value in getting business into the classroom and really showing students that having a good idea or an invention or thinking of a concept isn't enough. You've got to do something about it to have an impact on the world.
Narratives, stories, strategic conversations, role models, and platforms like this on a regular basis that disseminate the relevance of industry-academia partnership. It's imperative. And I think that's the way forward.
How do I follow that? The easiest thing to say is all of that. And, you know, I want to say something a bit radical, a bit different. My youngest son is autistic. I would love to see more done by industry. We've got things for gifted, we've got things for the high achievers and everything else. Let's do more with special needs. Let's, you know, when you get to 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, the system lets you down and people with special needs fall off the cliff. Let's teach them skills. Let's get them in the workplace. Let them give them value to life. And my son was lucky enough to do that, but I'd love to see others do it.
You know, from school education to industry perspective, the most important is a lot of students who don't do well in grade 12, and therefore they don't get into good universities. I think industry can play an important role by creating these students, institutions which can make them employable. Therefore, dropouts of grade 12 should not feel left out, and they should not feel that they are not good for the society. So I think industry can play a very dominant role by absorbing dropouts of grade 12. Safety network. Yeah, that's where we'll create a lot of social peace by doing that. Otherwise, these kids just go nowhere in life, and they become a social disturbance, so to say.
Yes, open to questions now, Khalifa.
Actually, I don't have a question. I have guys, honestly, like the amount of knowledge and discussion you guys had, like I need to reflect for a few days on them. I mean, they were amazing. I am so happy to be here today. I thought I'll do my part and leave, but I couldn't. I just want to bring few points and alarms that I'm glad you guys are here. You can react somewhere. I can't change those things. And I wish there's someone from the ministry here so they can hear it, but I'm glad they're not. You guys can put it there. I think some of the systems in universities today, that they judge you after 4 or 5 years of reporting systems and whatever. The problem with that, if you look, more than 90% of data collected on Earth happened over the last 2 years, compared to the other 10% from ancient Egyptian time up to now. If your judgment or proof of that you're doing well or not is a 6 or 7 years progress check, we will be falling behind like nothing. And honestly, and I even hear you guys when you're talking about the ministries and their approvals, and they're trying to kind of put you on track, but they don't know the track anymore, because the track is way not what they are doing. So God bless you on all of that, but you need to be really worried about the fact that no one knows where are we going, and we should find something very important that every systems are missing, is we need to find the passions of those people. I won't say student or kids. You need to find the passion, because everyone, if you teach me to become the best engineer or in whatever field, I am not going to live the next 30 years in something because my dad wanted that. You need to find passion. And I am a big innovator, entrepreneurship like advocate, but that doesn't mean it's the best for everyone. I want to be a singer, I want to be a daydreamer, I want to be whatever. Find passion in people and put them in that system. That way they'll strive. That's what we are missing. Schools today are putting us in 5 categories, like science, people in like non-art and so on. But maybe there are other things. That's the problem. So please, guys, you are the future for us, because you are. Make sure your plans and judgment doesn't take 3-4 years to make a plan change when things are really happening much faster.
Thank you, Khalifa.
Thank you.
Any questions here? You've got a mic.
Thank you very much. Really, it's very enlightening. I mean, we've been talking about innovation in education system. Do you agree that the 18 years journey for an individual is very lengthy now? In this exponential growth that's happening around us? You know, we start from KG until university. That's a very hectic journey for all of us, really. Is there any kind of innovation can be done to really reduce that time?
That's a brilliant sort of pointed question. I don't even know who to direct it to. Let me start with Professor Christopher.
Amazing question, first of all. And I think, again, this is where the narratives and the conversations need to change. We have been stuck in an industrial revolution system, and we need to start talking. I'll give you one example. There's something called nanodegrees. Some of you may have heard of it. Udacity runs it, nanodegrees, which means I'm a literature guy, but suddenly I have this passion towards what he was saying, blockchain. And so conventional wisdom will tell you, literature and blockchain, where's the connection, right? So now I have an opportunity, and I think the onus of directing people, because I've seen this when I tell people about Coursera and edX. I have this common challenge as an associate dean earlier of the undergrad programs. Second year, one of the challenges students will say, Prof, can I major in this and minor in this? And he's very confused. He wants to know. Now, the answer is not straightforward, because it pertains to your passion, pertains to what you want to do. So when you tell them, listen, you don't need to major or minor, you do what you want to do in this. And then there are a number of free options available. There's edX, there's Coursera. And the guy is actually stumped. He doesn't know this. He doesn't know there's Coursera. And this is a smart, intelligent, 20-something character who has no idea. So I think more and more of this exposure to these specialized skills which are available free of cost. Somebody says, how do I improve my language skills? Just watch English movies, go to YouTube. There are hundreds of free resources available. So I think it's that direction that we need to provide them, and it can be anything. Today you have everything. YouTube is now equally strong as a search engine that provides almost all the intelligentsia that you want. So I think the answer is direction.
Bryn,
Yeah.
Bryn, you want to say something?
I just want to add with other mic to this point, to give you a real example. I have a 17-year-old son and I have a 5-year-old son, and I've seen both generations. And for example, if I see my 5-year son and the knowledge and the way that he talks and he interacts with his iPad, PlayStation, and so on, I seriously wasn't there at 18 or 16. Why would I need to put him until 20 to graduate from university? It's a waste of resource. Trust me, we need to change.
My iPad is broken today, Khalifa, so maybe I need to get your 5-year-old son to fix it. But just to answer the point that came up, I probably need to reflect a bit more on the, whether 18 years or so, how much education's enough. But I think what will change, what is changing already, is the nature of the interaction between education universities and students and employees. So I think it's no longer a binary thing where someone goes through the education system, they leave, and then they never come back. I think it will become much more flexible, nuanced, that people might leave, 10 years later they'll come back, they might do a degree, maybe they'll just come back and do a short course, 3 months, 1 month. I think it'll be much more flexible. It's that whole lifelong learning agenda.
I just have to pay respect to Danish and his respected school. I have the experience and the pleasure to work with your student. I invited them into a program that I created. It's called knowledge rooms. We just selected 10 of DPS school students. They came on time for 4 hours. They were learning a new technique of learning, exactly like they chose the subject. They went to the internet. They really searched that internet subject. They proposed a report. From there, I take them to the rest of the rooms. Room number 3 will be, they will write a song. Room number 4, they will paint a painting. 5 will be modeling this one. And 6, they will act it as a play. And 7, we will catch up what we learned from this one and recite it in our memory. Excellent performance. In 4 hours, they didn't want to leave. They enjoyed it, and they had really, I have a video about this one. I can share it with you, Dennis, just to pay that respect. Thank you.
I think just as we spoke about, there are certain rules about the education system which need to be broken. I won't say broken, but it is a very amorphous, fluid environment. So you need to, yeah, and it's important for allowing our students to explore their passions, their creativity and curiosity. I mean, I'll give a personal example. I'm a little embarrassed about it, but I took an online course in digital marketing, in mobile application writing, and photography. And there were other people in the class. It was a global online class with audio only and through a Dublin-based company. Everyone was less than half my age in that class, without exception. And then we had a test, online test, and the results came out. I was top of the class. So, not in photography, but in digital marketing, I was top of the class. Mobile, I was somewhere in the middle. Photography, I was pretty bad. But in digital marketing, so of course, I got a round of applause from everyone who was in the online class, and then I revealed my age, and they were even more shocked. But everybody was curious, why are you going at your age to learn about digital marketing and mobile? Because I want to. I just want to know. I mean, tomorrow if I'm interviewing somebody to hire, I need to know, what kind of world do you live in? So I don't think learning is about, the structured industrial system that we have created. We have to sort of loosen the knots and let people explore. And some of these platforms like Udacity, Udemy, and edX are doing a wonderful job. One more example, the founder of Udacity, he was a professor in Harvard in computer sciences. The first course that he launched, he had a capacity of, I think, only 99 or 98 students in the class who could take the class in Harvard. He opened up his classroom to the world. The servers were crashing because there were thousands of students who wanted to take that class. And he made everyone go through the same test, the guys who learned in a personalized learning experience in the class and the guys who took the online class. 98 out of the 100 people, top 100 people who graduated from that course were online. Which means that how much of creativity, passion are our education systems denying? The world of talented people is out there. We need to open ourselves. So with that, thank you. Is there a question? Yeah, Rebecca.
Yeah, I think you touched on something really important. I was at a lecture the other day which was about the 100-year life. And I realized, I spent a week thinking about this concept because I realized I had never thought about actually living to 100. I had probably max thought of living to the age of my parents, which was, I guess, a precedent of the age the genes were living to. And the lecture was about, have you actually thought of how you're going to fill this 100 years? Currently, it's very much about education at the early stages of your life, then you go work, and then you go retire. However, you've pointed out you're taking online courses now. A lot of people will have to rethink how they're going to live their life. You might have 3 careers across your life, which might mean you could be studying languages when you're young, and then suddenly you go and study engineering at the age of 50.
Yes, absolutely. I think this is a brilliant summary, and I think we have almost eaten into our tea break. But I think we broke some rules here in this panel discussion. It was no more, gray-haired guys on this side and people asking questions. It became a conversation. This is how we wanted it to be. And thank you, everyone in the audience, and especially our panelists. It was wonderful. Thank you.